Our first impresario for the afternoon is Martin Bellingham, Group Managing Manager for Forrester Life, and he's going to explain exactly what he's going to do, so I don't need to say anything. Martin.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, the title of this session is What's Keeping You Awake at Night? Or as Keith said, it's What's Keeping You Awake After Lunch. So thank you very much for this great slot. First of all, before I start waffling, if you have a look in your delegate packs, I think they're called, there should be it's either peach or salmon pink, depending on your ability to decipher colours, a sheet that I'd like you to fill in as we go through this. And here's a workshop exercise, so you're going to be doing all the work after I finish waffling. And then what I'd like to do is to collect these, if you can hand them in at the registration desk, either at the tea break or at the end of the session. Thank you very much. Has everybody got one of these? I'll take that as a resounding yes. Right. So what we're going to do in the next half an hour, and I'm under strict orders from Keith to try and stick to these times. I'll talk a bit just about the aim of the session. There's an individual exercise, there's a group exercise to actually get you speaking to each other on your tables. And then there's another group exercise for you to do. And then if we've got some time at the end of the session, I'll pick on a few people and we'll try and get some feedback. So, what the hell is this session all about? Well, many years ago when I started my role at the Children's Mutual, we were doing research into a new savings product, the Child Trust Fund. And we'd done typical research and we were struggling really to get inside the mind of the customer. And I'd done a great presentation and gone through sort of 300 decks of slides and bored everybody rigid. And the CEO said to me, Martin, that's all very interesting, but what we really want to know is what's keeping them awake at night. And this led to the idea of actually, a bit like big data, there's lots of things going on in people's lives, whether it's work, whether it's home. There's lots of issues, there's lots of data, lots of information bouncing around your brain. But what we've started to do as part of our research is to say to people, actually, what is that one or two key things that's keeping you awake at night, that's front of mind, that you're really concerned about? Now, we've then started to expand that along in terms of some of the training we've done with Doug and helping analysts thinking about when they're making presentations or they're doing particular research projects, who are they doing it for, why are they being asked to do it in the first place, but also what's front of mind for the person that's requested the research. So today, what we want you to do is to understand and try and have a bit of a little journey of self-discussion and on your tables, but also starting with yourself. Try and come to some conclusions about, actually, for you, what's keeping you awake at night. Share that with the table, and then we'll expand a bit on the exercise. So we've heard this morning about getting the question right. We've heard about big data. And I think, you know, as was said this morning, big data is fine, but actually it's the big questions that I think are just as important. And again, in terms of the presentations this morning, sometimes you don't need big data to answer some of the questions. The outcomes I want from you, and this is why you've got a sheet I'd like to fill in, is we're looking for research projects to be done for next year as part of the Esrc sort of funding. So really for students, what are the issues that you think you would like to maybe have a look at yourself, but you don't have the time, but they're bigger questions going forward for your part of the industry. So we run what we call parents panels. So these are focus groups with parents, fairly unstructured because I'm facilitating them. And we just really try to get an understanding of what's going on in the mind of parents of young children. So we do a normal focus group, and then at the end of the session, we've done this for 8.5 years now, we say, okay, we've talked about interesting things like life insurance, investments, and who's going to win X Factor. What we need to do is to sort of round off, so it's the opposite of an icebreaker, with actually what's keeping them awake at night. And these are just some typical examples we get, people sharing. And I am a member of the Market Research Society, and their rules say that I'm not allowed to make you say anything that's going to cause you any embarrassment. So I'd like you to only share what you're willing to share as an individual or with your table. So that's up to you to control that. So people will say, well, actually, can we afford another child? You know, they may be in their late 20s, they've had the first child. Actually, we'll have mum saying, we're not sure if we can. Debt. income. It's a real issue for families across all spectrums, but more recently we found this coming and being more mentioned from a lot of our respondents. The practical nature of roadworks. So actually, some people will take this very literally. It's the fact there's some traffic lights outside the house and I haven't got a decent night's sleep for 3 weeks while they're trying to repair a leaking water main. You know, these things are important in terms of if you send a salesman to that customer's front door, or if you actually send a questionnaire about what they think about their local water services or the council tax or something like that, you're going to get different responses according to what their circumstances are. Now, we're not going to get these answers from everybody across the whole of the country and pull them together. What this is trying to do is, as an exercise, is to think beyond not just what the problem is now, but some of the problems going forward, and to develop a greater empathy with our customers. Another big issue for our customers are school choices. So the stress of not just choosing the primary school, but also the secondary school. So we've had discussion groups with parents with 6-month-olds, and they're having issues about actually which school. Why is that important? Because actually what they're looking to do is to move into the right catchment for the right primary school, to then get in the right catchment for the right secondary school, and these are the kind of things that they may have no control over, and that's causing them stress and lack of sleep. Some people have got nothing keeping them awake at night, and they will quite happily tell us that. Health issues, a big issue for people, and then potential changes at work, sort of redundancy. So what I want you to do, and I think we're looking just to spend 2 minutes on this just as an individual for the first bit. So bit of navel gazing, and share what you want to share. You don't need to talk to anybody else yet for this part of the exercise. Okay, have a think, bear with me, and then just write down on your little peach or salmon pink sheet of paper for exercise 1, what is your key issue that's keeping you awake at night? But again, only share what you want to share. Right, thanks very much for that. Hope you found it useful. I know there's some of you finding this exercise a bit confusing. Apologies for that. Hopefully it'll become clearer as we go through it. The point of this particular exercise, I think, was really trying to join up what we were doing this morning in terms of, there's lots of data out there, there's lots of questions that need answering. I think as analysts, sometimes we tend to focus on the questions we've been asked to answer rather than the questions that should be answered. And the next stage of this exercise is really you've done your sort of experience of this exercise on yourself and shared that with others. We're going to move on to thinking about your stakeholders. So when you're actually doing a piece of research or analysis or trying to answer a question for an external stakeholder, what's going through their mind? Actually, what's the big issues? So thinking about customers, what's front of mind for them? We looked at, is it sort of quality of food? Is it the price of food? Is it availability of food, referred to earlier today? But thinking about your own organisations, what do you think is front of mind for senior managers? So has there been a high level communication that says costs must be slashed across the board by 10%, and you've just put forward a proposal that says you're going to spend more money? So being aware of the kind of factors that are important to senior managers, your directors. The grapevine communications usually work well in most large organisations. If a director is struggling to meet a sales target or an income target or a profit target or something like that, is the report that you're going to submit or the piece of work that you're going to propose, is it going to help them solve a problem, or is it actually going to make the problem worse? Because otherwise you can do all this work and it's going to get to the senior decision maker and they're going to say, actually that's going to make the problem worse, so we ain't going to do that. Whereas if you start to think about this as you start to do the work and the analysis, that's what I mean about not just answering the question that's being asked, but thinking about other questions and other solutions. And then this leads on to the skills that analysts require, exercise that we're going to do subsequently. Obviously aware there's some public sector colleagues in the room as well today, so I did ask Keith if it was all right to say what keeps politicians awake at night, but he's vetoed all my gags about Nick Clegg and various other politicians, so we'll leave that to a competition another time. And it's really, yeah, so the point of this next exercise is really just thinking about work that maybe you're currently working on, work that you might be doing for external clients. But as their stakeholders, what do you think is really front of mind for them? What's really keeping them awake at night? So what would a successful outcome be from your piece of work that you can deliver to them and say, it's great news, I know you're looking to save money, we've managed to come up with a way that saves money, or actually you're looking to increase our market share in the southeast of London, we've come up with 3 sites that are actually going to help you achieve your target, which means you're going to get a bonus and we're all going to get a bonus and the world is a happy place. So what I'd like you to do is just go through that exercise. You've done your internal view, have a think about at your organisational levels, those stakeholders that you're working with, what's going to be front of mind for them.
Martin, just before we start, some people might be a bit sensitive about having their form labelled so-and-so limited in case those bastards of directors ever hear about it.
Right.
What's going to happen to this is that the forms will be taken in subsequently, analysed, but aggregated. There'll be no...
There'll be, there'll be anonymised. The only reason why we want your contact details is when we come up to the actual research proposals, which is at the end of this session. Mm-hmm. So at the moment, we will make sure, and if you want to, come and see me after this session if you don't want to have your name on it, and that's fine. But we will address this issue in a minute. I'll give it some more thought. But is everybody sure what they've got to do for this next bit of the session? Yes? Right. Right. If I could just have some quiet, please. Hello? I've lost my chairman. He's at the back. Right. Can I have some quiet, please? Otherwise I'll get Ben and his tapping glass. Right, if we just draw that to an end, thanks very much for participating in that session. I know that it was a struggle for some of you, and apologies for that. The aim of the exercise really is to very simply get you to think about yourself, your stakeholders, your customers, and also try and prioritise some of the issues that is going on in their head. Capture that on the pink sheet, and then what we're looking to do is, if you have got any sort of ideas for sort of research projects going forward, if you can stick your contact details on that, and then Keith or somebody from the Esrc will get in touch with you. So just to be clear, you've got your salmon sheet. If you want it to be completely anonymous, that's fine. If you do have any research ideas, if you could put your contact details on the bottom of that. If you want it to remain anonymous, but you also do have research ideas, please feel free to email Keith with them, and then we can take them forward. But if you can hand the sheets in at the registration desk at the coffee break. And so hopefully that session was useful in terms of getting you to think about things in a slightly different way. It wasn't meant to be easy getting you after lunch. It was trying to stretch you out of your comfort zone, and I think that brief's been achieved. But also to try and get some ideas for some areas of concerns for large businesses, which the ERC can look at some research projects going forward. So thanks very much for participating with that, and look forward to reading the results on your forms. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks very much. Before we move on from that, a critical output is some suggestions and ideas for research projects which might be funded. What's the metrics for that? Could I ask one of my academic colleagues to get up and say what makes a good research project for a student of this sort? If I pick randomly, where's Paul Longley?
Personally, I think a good research project probably about breadth versus depth. It's much better to have a research project that is narrow in scope and yet conclusive than one that is very vague very wide in scope but very vague in its conclusions. There you are, that's a starter.
Well, we'll get some examples later on when we are welcoming, I think, 2 or 3 prize winners, student prize winners. But could any of my other academic colleagues give a better answer than Paul's? Martin, you're looking very...
Me?
Yes.
Yeah, well, no, he gave a very good answer. I think one of the things I try to encourage my students to do, students actually who was funded this year, are doing a Masters in GIS in Leeds, and his dissertation didn't include a single map.
That's heresy.
That's an example of very bad. I think actually getting hands on some data, always, I think, I get so many students who want to do a survey, and they want to do a survey of the high street, and ask people about their opinions of the high street. I much prefer people getting hands on hard data, quantitative data rather than qualitative data. So that's what I try and encourage my students to do. They usually fail miserably, but no, some of them do. And the best dissertations tends to be the ones that are analytically focused, using some secondary data.
I see Dave Martin nodding. Is that anyone who doesn't do something very focused on analytics gets booted out?
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo both of those. I think they're both entirely sound. I don't think it's true that the university is a place where you've got quite a space for diversity in master's projects, but they're going to work for the student if the objectives can be clearly defined as you get into the project. What you don't want, and I sense what we're doing, we're having a little conversation here with some of you that might be thinking about next year's projects. I think the thing is that it has to be possible, even from a broad base, to make rapid progress to clear targets. Now, the methodologies that people use vary quite a bit, and obviously in this setting, secondary data, which you can put together with business insight and perhaps stuff that comes outside, is really going to be valuable. But it's very difficult for a student to work on a project to make real progress if the objectives remain poorly defined, or if you can't get the whole thing in line because you know what you're aiming at, but actually you can't get the data for it. So it's a real art of being able to manage the whole process so that the pieces are in balance.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask Keith, as the representative of all the commercial people here, what would the commercial people be looking for in generic terms in a student project?
I think that they obviously want to see something that's useful to them and their business, but I think there's a really interesting approach to this. One of the members of the group, in fact it was one of the students said this to me, that his retail sponsor said to him, the first thing about this is to get a good dissertation out for you, for your project. They wanted the actual student to do something successful. And I think that probably sort of set the approach and the scene, that they were both in it together. And that, as it happened, it's the first prize winner this afternoon. And I think sort of setting that as the environment was great for the students, and also cemented a relationship with the retailer that helped things along.
Okay. All right. Well, that's very helpful. Which I hope it is. Can you rewrite your research projects as being achievable and valuable to the organisation as necessary? And we'll collect the forms in later on. Good. Thank you. Now that takes us to the ESRC's support for retail research. And I know Bruce Jackson, is Bruce about? Is going to talk about this, but just as someone who's been involved with ESRC for a long time, the changes in research councils generally have been remarkable over the last 10 years or thereabouts. A move much more towards engagement with the outside world rather than self-centered, remarkably focused on their own interests, academics, and a much greater focus on outcomes, measurable outcomes, which I guess Bruce is going to talk about.
Exactly. Thank you for the introduction. You'll be glad to know that I'm going to be quite short today, mainly because I lost my voice about 2 days ago. So I'm glad that it's back today. Okay, I'm going to give you a little overview of the ESRC for those that don't know. But the ESRC is one of 7 research councils in the UK. We're the largest organisation for funding social and economic research, funding high quality, independent academic research on social and economic research that has economic, academic and social impact. Now, our funding for this year is 204 million. At any one time we support around 4,000 postgraduate students and researchers, and it's split across a number of different sectors. So we support training and skills, about 26% of our budget goes into that. We are open to responsive research. We fund strategic and collaborative research, and also we about 16% of our research goes into methods and infrastructure. And we structure this so, in essence, we recognise the importance that we need to continue to invest into the future. We need to create a world-class, long-term infrastructure that supports academic research. We need to build the next generation of research leaders through our training and skills. And we also need to support research that addresses some of the major challenges that are facing society. Now, as a publicly funded body, we're committed to ensuring our research strengthens the UK. The UK has a world-leading social science research base, and we're committed again to ensuring that they achieve not only academic impact, but they create economic and social impact. And we recognise that to do this, we need to help academics create effective partnerships. Partnerships bring with them a wealth of opportunities for social scientists, and co-production of research helps bring researchers closer to practitioners to inform policy and practice. Events such as the Doug Conference today are a fantastic way to help bring academics and practitioners closer together. And through closer collaboration with private sector organisations, public sector and civil society bodies, this helps the ESRC leverage about £20 million worth of co-funding into the research councils as well. So, why do we work with businesses? Well, closer engagement with business is an ESRC priority. We've always been very good at building partnerships with public and civil society organisations, but we recognise that we needed to strengthen this area. Our approach is becoming more and more flexible, and our business engagement ranges from small-scale projects with SMEs to larger collaborative initiatives with, such as the Enterprise Research Centre with the BBA. Now, we structure our research, or we have a delivery plan in 2011, and we have 3 strategic priorities within that. So, economic performance of sustainable growth, influencing behaviour and informing interventions, and a vibrant and fair society. And we also prioritise engagement with a number of sectors. So we prioritise retail, financial services, and the green economy. Now, I lead our engagement with the retail sector. It's one of 3 priority sectors for the ESRC. And the reason for this is that the retail sector plays an important part in society and the economy. And it means that research in and on the sector plays into all of our 3 strategic priorities. Retail is one of those few sectors that has a presence in every neighbourhood. Neighbourhoods are often underpinned by retail as a provider of employment, and often the local town centre is a focal point for community activity. And it's key that understanding the behaviours of individual people, organisations and communities is key to helping understand the challenges that are now facing the sector. And as the UK recovers from recession, and attention turns to how we can build sustainable growth at a local, national and regional level, the importance of research into the position of retail and how the sector might meet these challenges and opportunities becomes ever more important. Now, to help the Esrc facilitate communication between academics and retailers, we appointed a number of teams of retail experts with the primary role being to map out the research interests of retail, identify opportunities for collaboration and knowledge exchange, and to provide strategic advice on how the Esrc can support academics' create impact within the sector. Now, as part of a wider initiative for the Esrc to facilitate access to different types of data, we employed a team of retail data knowledge navigators, Keith and Paul, who've been developing opportunities focused in around data infrastructure such as retail store card data and open data sources. And it demonstrated the enormous potential of these collaborative projects around retail and open data, and the potential benefits around collaboration between academics and retailers to promote innovation and drive growth, which hopefully you'll hear about later. Now, we also recognised that we needed to facilitate further engagement with the sector as a whole. We needed to ensure that they had the knowledge and skills to help tackle some of the important issues that were facing it. So we launched a £2.5 million Esrc retail sector initiative. We steered the initiative to encourage applications which address the following strategic challenge areas, as we believe that there were exceptional opportunities to drive innovation and growth through the transfer of skills and knowledge and expertise. Now, we're just about to announce the commissioning of this, but we're pleased to announce that we appointed Professor Kim Cassidy to act as a coordinator for the initiative as a whole. Now, we're also seeking to develop more flexible and open ways that we can work with partners and build collaborations to help ensure that we can respond to those opportunities to promote social sciences and to encourage knowledge exchange, and ultimately to ensure that we create impact from our investment within our investments. For example, we've just supported Professor Neil Wrigley to lead an evidence review on town centres and high streets to feed into the Future High Streets Forum, being led by DCLG. We're also working with the local data company and Dr. Alex Singleton, having a look at a project that maps variations in retail sector business rates. And that work is using VOA data, LDC data and Collier's data to help provide an open and robust evidence base to inform policy and practice. This was picked up last week in the Financial Times, and it's a fantastic project that's really demonstrate the value of open and privately held data and how that can help address issues of sectoral importance. Okay. Now, as is evidenced by the previously highlighted work, we need to ensure that high-quality social science has the high-quality data infrastructure and data sources to support it. The recently refreshed UK data strategy for data resources sets out the vision and practical actions for what must be done to ensure that these are maintained and improved. The Esrc makes considerable investment to ensure that researchers have the tools and resources they need to undertake world-class research that has academic, social and economic impact. We fund the UK Data Service to provide a unified point of access to extensive range of data sources, such as the census data, government department data, longitudinal studies, etc., etc. We also fund a number of flagship longitudinal studies, such as the Life Study, which tracks over 90,000 children from tracking growth, development, health, well-being, social circumstance. And it's going to track 90,000 babies from all walks of life, initially cover from pregnancy through to the early stages of childhood. Understanding society, a major household panel study is targeting 40,000 households and is the largest type of study in the world. Now, recently we were pleased to note that in the Chancellor's autumn statement included 600 million for science, research and innovation, with about 484 million of capital funding being allocated to the RC UK for 8 great British technologies. These were drawn from the RC UK Strategic Framework for Capital Investment, published in November 2012. And within this, the Esrc secured 64 million to support a range of activities around the big data theme. Now, the ESRC's Big Data Network will support the development of a network of innovative investments that will strengthen the UK's competitive advantage in big data for social sciences. The core aim of this network is to facilitate access to different types of data, thereby stimulating the growth, innovative research and development methods to undertake the research. As is illustrated in the slide, it's going to be divided up into 3 phases. Phase 1 is going to open up government department data through the creation of the Administrative Data Research Network. The commissioning of that is now complete, and actually there'll be an announcement tomorrow with regards to who are leading the centres. Phase 2 is focused on the business and local government data research centres, and again that's opening up privately held and local government data for research purposes. Bids for that came in yesterday from research organisations, so I know that a few people have been burning the midnight oil in the room. And then the third phase is opening up third sector data and social media data for research purposes. Now, as a whole, it's expected that there will be opportunities for interactions between all elements of the Big Data Research Network, and they'll work together around the wider objectives to facilitate access to different types of forms of data and ensuring that the maximum impact is generated through that data for the mutual benefit of data owners and researchers, but also that it will contribute to society and the economy more generally through allowing research to be undertaken. Now, you'll be glad to know that my voice is going, so I'm concluding. It's a very exciting time for social sciences at the moment. There are massive opportunities, but also big challenges. And we need to work openly and flexibly to create effective partnerships to tackle and to take advantage of these opportunities and challenges. I'd like to think we've made great strides in making ourselves more open, more flexible, more responsive, but we still have a way to go. And if you'd like to discuss any opportunity, or if there's anything that you'd heard that you'd like to find out more about, our door's always open. And we need your help to make sure that we maintain a world-class social science research base that can make a difference to all of our lives. Finally, I'd like to say thank you to Keith and to the DUG members for their support and guidance throughout the year, and everybody attending today's event. The discussions have been very interesting, and I'd like to, if you'd like to contact me to discuss anything, please feel free to drop me a line. Thanks very much.
Don't go just yet. We need you back again to give the prizes out, which we're looking forward to. Just before Paul Longley starts on his 3-hour peroration,
someone else is sorting that out, all right?
Can I just make some observations, if I may, which I can say more easily than you could, about ESRC? Mm-hmm. The first thing is British social science. A series of independent studies over the last year or so have demonstrated that we are normally in second place in the world rankings of social science of a wide variety of different kinds, economics and sociology and others. For geography, everyone will be glad to know we're actually top. We're better than the United States. So I think you can have confidence that overall the system is very good in the UK, and therefore we should be able to get some good research out of this. Second thing is, it's a distinguishing characteristic of ESRC compared to other similar bodies worldwide, that it's always been in it for the long term. The first data archive that was set up was in 1965 or thereabouts, and ESRC has been funding data collection on a progressively larger scale, and data, what's the word, looking after data, data custodianship ever since then. So this is no just latest whim that we're talking about here. £64 million that you extracted from government via UK research councils was a great achievement, and it seems to me it marks a new beginning in the scale of the enterprise that we're all involved in. So that's very helpful and very innovative. And of course there's some other data sets that you touched upon lightly, one of them, but the longitudinal studies, of which there are some 9 major ones in the UK, which start usually with birth cohorts in different years, in 1950s one, for example, is often a source of data that you can't get out of normal aggregate data sets, and they're enormously important. They've been funded by the Medical Research Council and by ESRC. So what I wanted to do was to make sure that any of our business colleagues in the audience who didn't know enough about this organization and about its long-term history and data should be aware of all of that. This is a very trustworthy and supportive organization, and I'm saying all this not because they have subsidized this conference today, but that helps, and I'll have a drink to you later on. Thanks very much, Bruce.
Thank you.
Right, now on to Paul Longley, Professor at UCL, who's going to talk about the Retail Research and Data Initiative. Paul?
Yes, thank you very much, David. And this is really just an update, I suppose, really, on the talk I gave at this conference last year about one of the elements of one of the quite small initiatives, I suppose, really, that Bruce and ESRC have funded. And I'd begin, I suppose, by echoing David's comments that ESRC has very much been in the social science business for the long haul, but again, to re-emphasise that it's actually in the more recent past, and not least through the activities of Bruce and his colleagues, that the activities of groups like this have come into much sharper focus and been rather central to ESRC's view of the world. So what I just want to describe briefly is 2 of the activities that Keith Dugmore and I have been involved in the retail research and data work that ESRC has funded. And this is a slide from a publicly available website which has something to say about big data and has something to say, I think, about some of the activities today. We've heard quite a lot, I mean, from Max this morning, for example, about the promise of open data and the notion that the data the government collects about people should be made available to people. And these are quite lofty and sort of well-intentioned aspirations. In practice, and again we touched on this a little bit this morning when we were talking about data.gov.uk, a lot of people don't know where to actually find information, and here we're perhaps focusing not so much on the major players that are members of the demographic users group, but the broader constituency of small and medium-sized enterprises, for which ESRC also has interests. And so the Retail Research and Data website, you need 2020 vision, which I certainly haven't got to read the detail of this slide, but it's www.retailresearchdata.org, does seek to broach in a way some of the issues which underpin the use of open data, the use of big data in retail research applications. And the first of the questions that you can see highlighted on this slide is actually the actual question, which data sets are now freely available. And what we've sought to do for people who are perhaps sort of new to using sort of open data sources is provide a one-stop shop where you can find out about data sets, view them and look at things like their geographic distribution, but perhaps also, sort of equally important, evaluate the provenance of those data sets. And that's some sort of elephant in the room, I think, in a lot of our discussions so far today. People are talking about big data, people are talking about open data. It's perhaps testimony to the quality of the presentations that we've had today, that nobody's actually said they have answers in terms of claiming universal coverage of the population at large. And while data may be big, they may not be representative of the population at large, or they may not be representative of any known subgroup of society which can be defined. And that's something that the academic community and the research councils do bring to meetings of this sort, because the Economic and Social Research Council and the university sector are interested in stakeholders from throughout society rather than particular interest groups within it. And so this website, as I say, it attempts to be a one-stop shop, an introduction to open data, and their characteristics. And latterly, this is one screenshot from it. And latterly, working with the demographics user group, we've also started to make steps towards the co-production of information, if you like. And so this slide comes from a project that we've actually run at UCL. The precursor to it was run at the University of Leeds by Phil Rees and Dan Vickers, who was then a student at Leeds. And it'll be familiar to a number of people in the demographic users group as the output area classification. And what we've done here is, prior to the release of the output area classification for the UK, we've put a version of it up for consultation. It is a partial and consultative version of it, because as some of you will know, the Scots have been particularly numerically challenged with relation to the 2011 census data and haven't added up all the numbers yet. But what we've done is created, or what Chris Gale, who's in the room, has done, has created a classification for England and Wales, and the demographic users group, as well as wider interest groups and stakeholders within the retail sector, have been invited to participate in a stakeholder consultation. One of the characteristics, just for the oak anoraks amongst you, is an innovation in the 2011 output area classification is the whole of Greater London no longer falls into one of the supergroups, but that's a particular detail. And so these sorts of consultations between sectors really help us understand a bit more of what big data are likely to be representative, and also help us to navigate the data maze to some extent, to understand the various missions that we're engaged in creating summary measures and making sense of the huge volumes of raw data which are now available. And I suppose more generally, they are hopefully pointing ways to sort of understanding in a retail sense what data are in my trolley. You know, sort of that the academic sector has interests, some long established, some more recently fermented, in various aspects of policy and retail relevant research. Some of which we can see here. If we go clockwise from the 6 o'clock on here, Bruce and his team have been at the forefront of pushing forward knowledge exchange opportunities. The retail program, which he described just now, is one of a number of them. Academics know quite a lot about open data. They're more focused on it in terms of a lot of strategic problems than I'd suggest that a lot of sort of hard-pressed retailers focusing much more on operational concerns, particularly in difficult times. The academic sector is well connected with ONS, DCLG, and so on and so forth. And so going clockwise towards the 9 o'clock point, that means that academics are interested in partnerships with retailers, small and medium-sized enterprises, local authorities, and so on and so forth. And Bruce has said something about the various sort of specific initiatives, and David also, about the UK Data Service, the successor to the UK Data Archive, and the big data centres that ESRC are in the process of funding. The final element, though, which is relevant to our other discussions this afternoon, is what you can see at 3 o'clock on this diagram. And that's the increasingly sort of seamless infrastructure that's being put in place for training in methods that are relevant, using data which are efficient, effective, and safe to use in a range of applications. Sharon will say something about the Nuffield and ESRC-funded Q-STEP initiative, which is pitched at the undergraduate level, and which a number of the Q-STEP centres are keen to engage with industry, particularly in the with regard to short-term placements and short courses in industry-relevant topics. And the bottom element in that box speaks very much of doctoral training centres, which are also increasingly concerned with, increasingly keen to become engaged in at least applicable, if not sort of directly applied research. The remainder, though, of this section really focuses on the middle of that sandwich that you see there, which is a second strand to the retail research and data programme that has been funded. And that is the second year of the funding of the Masters, the National Masters dissertation prizes. And these really, at a micro scale and in a grassroots sense, epitomise a lot of this rhetoric, or put into practice a lot of this rhetoric about engagement. As many of the people in this room from direct experience will know, the RR&D MSc dissertation competition is fundamentally about real-world problems and research, and it's about actually using students, if you like, as the bridge between the academic and the retail sectors, bringing experience of working with big companies and exposing the students to the kinds of problems which keep retailers awake at night, and which can actually open the door to a possible future job or research career. And so we'll shortly hear who's won the ESRC prizes this year. In some senses, as I say, all the students are winners in that they've all not only received bursaries from the companies concerned, leverage in Bruce's terms just now, but they've also got experience in actually working in real-world problems. And so here, and I apologise once again for the font size, but this is still up on the ESRC website. Here's the list of the 13 or so topics which were proposed this year, worked up in association with retailers by Keith Dugmore and myself. These formed the basis of 11 projects which actually ended up being delivered, 2 of which have been awarded prizes or are about to be awarded prizes by Bruce. So I'll hand back to Bruce at that point.
Okay. We have 2 runner-up prizes and a first prize. So if I start with the runner-up prize, unfortunately the student can't be with us today. So if I invite the supervisor to come up, if I believe they're in the room. We have Iona Tutor from the University of Southampton, a project with Camelot, which is the exploration of fusing geographies. And that is with, where are we? Jim Wright. Thank you very much. Is Jim Wright? Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, joint runner-up, and the student is here, is Adam Dales from the University of Southampton. Project with Cooperative, and it was entitled Census 2011 Location Planning. Adam?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. And Adam is now going to present his work.
Okay, I've just been asked to give a very short presentation about what I did. So my title was to look at the census data from 2011, look at how it can be used to make the most out of location planning. This was in collaboration with the Cooperative. Firstly, a bit of background about me and my education. I've just finished 4 years at the University of Southampton. I did a BSc in Geography and then went on to do an MSc in Applied GIS and Remote Sensing. Within this is where I did my dissertation. Currently, I now work as a market planner for Yum, who own the brands KFC, Pizza Hut and Taco Bell. I think that the 2 main points that underpin my research project is the highly competitive retail market, especially in terms of convenience, and that the cooperative food are in. And then the vast amount of data available, as you've heard from the other presentations, there's so much data available. And in relation to this project, it's the 2011 census data. That's just an image to show how the data can be used. I split my project into 3 research questions. The first one looked at the difference between the analyst catchment, which is the predicted catchment for a store, and then the membership catchment, which was assumed to be the actual catchment for the store. The second research question looked at how the census data has changed between 2001 and 2011. And then the last research question looked at whether census variables can be used to explain the differences in store performance of the co-op stores. So the data I used, I originally started with 60 stores, but as Scotland hadn't produced their census data, that got cut down to 45 stores. So that was one of the problems of my dissertation. The co-op provided me with the data relating to stores in terms of sales category, and then a list of the analyst catchment output areas and the membership catchment output areas. So this was the basis of my data. I was then able to download the data from the ONS website for England and Wales, and I used the 2001 and 2011 census data. My method, it was mostly based around Microsoft Excel, so data management lookups, and I also used it for some of the presentation of the results. I also used ArcGIS, that was all for presenting the results. The these are just an example of some of the results I got. The one on the left is for research question 1, which compares the analyst and membership catchment. And then these two maps of the UK looked at some specific census variables and how they've changed between 2001 and 2011. So darker areas show where they've changed more. The map on the left is tenure in private rented, and then the right one is religion and Christianity. This is an example of the results I got for research question 3. I use this together with pattern recognition to identify whether there are any specific census variables that could be used to explain the differences in store performance of the stores that I used. In terms of recommendations, in my dissertation I made some recommendations relating to how important it is to get the predicted store catchment correct, and then how things like web maps can be used in the field to aid the process. For example, someone could take a tablet out into the field, load up a map and identify where competitors are, where their store is, and just general things on the map. Lastly, I just want to say a few thank yous. So firstly, Professor David Martin, who's my supervisor for this project from Southampton, Sarah Layton and Simon Harvey from the cooperative who supervised my project, and then Bruce Jackson, Keith Dugmore and Paul Longley from the Esrc. And then also from the University of Southampton, Dr. Jadu Dash and Dr. Jim Wright, who taught me all the skills that I needed over the past 4 years. And then Mark Harlow and Scott McHarg from the cooperative, who were also involved. Thank you.
Okay, and I'm pleased to announce that the first prize goes to Robert Lee from UCL, project with M&S and mobile social data.
Hello, as Bruce said, my name is Robert Lee. The title of my project was The Validity of Geotagged Tweets for Predicting Footfall for Retail. A bit of background, I did my undergraduate in geography at the University of Nottingham before coming to UCL to do my master's in GIS. So I did my project with Marks & Spencer's. So I had 3 main research questions. Firstly, are geotagged tweets a reliable representation for the presence of people? Secondly, what additional demographic information can be generated from the names of the people who tweeted? And thirdly, could catchment areas be made using tweets? I think the research will be important to Marks & Spencer's because international expansion has been important to them in the past and going forward, and this data is available globally and it's free. Also, I think it can provide far more information than a standard footfall count. So as a quick background to the actual Twitter data, when somebody tweets, they have the choice whether or not to share their location. And using Twitter's API, you can download a free sample of all of those tweets. Each tweet comes with a coordinate, a forename, a surname, the content of the tweet, and the time and date it was sent. Then using the moniker dataset, I was able to classify those tweets into age and gender groups, as you can see on the graph. So you can see there's a relatively even distribution between male and female users, with a slight male imbalance of 57%, and a heavy weighting towards younger users, with 50% below the age of 30, and a particular peak around the 16 to 19-year-old age group. So the first major area of the project was looking into modeling footfall. This looked to take the number of tweets in the vicinity of a store to be able to predict how many people would be in that store at that time. This was calibrated using Marks & Spencer's footfall data, which they record using cameras in their stores, counting the number of people entering and leaving. And this graph just shows the results. That's testing the model in Nottingham. So I built it in London, but here I'm testing it in Nottingham to show that it can be used in other cities or other countries. And you can see where I predict that footfall might be 25,000, it may have actually been 30,000. So it is relatively accurate with a high R-square of 75%. So the second main area was building catchment maps. Here, I found out who had tweeted from inside a shopping centre, so here Meadowhall. I then went back to the Twitter API and requested all of their tweets, so I could then find out where they lived throughout the UK. And I did that based on finding the postcode sector, which they tweeted from most regularly on a Sunday between 8 PM and 8 AM, because that's when they're most likely to be at home. And you can see the Twitter catchment's better at picking out some areas than perhaps the Marks and Spencer's catchment in red. So you can see it shows Kingston upon Hull, and particularly the impact of the motorway. And also the intensity of the colour shows how many people live, or how many visitors live in those areas, and could be used to show how important those different areas are to the store. And this is just a quick example showing that that same analysis can be applied on an international scale. And here I've classified people as tourists if they tweeted more regularly from an international country than they did the UK. And the last area I looked into was content analysis. This was quite a challenge because Twitter is so irregular. You have short tweets with spelling mistakes, strange punctuation, hashtags. So there's no really available software online which can easily analyze it. So instead I looked to classify it manually by counting the most regular words used in different stores. And I looked into things like whether you could work out if somebody was in a group or on their own, or whether they were in a rush based on what they were saying. But I think there's a lot of potential in the future to really understand a retailer's customer based on what they're tweeting. So in conclusion, I looked into all facets of geotag tweets for retail. I think I proved that you can use it to estimate footfall, but also plenty of other interesting areas. And I think content will be particularly important going forward. And I think Twitter data is unique in that it's entirely global, where you can pick out these international tourism patterns and movements, but then drill right down and actually see what an individual person is thinking. And I'd just like to quickly thank Paul Longley, my supervisor, Michael Whiteleg at Marks and Spencer's, and also Guy Lansley at UCL, who helped me join the project. And I look forward to speaking to everyone at the poster fair after. Thank you.
Okay, that just about wraps up, I think, the presentation elements of this session. Before we close, when we go for tea, the posters, not just of Adam and Rob, but also a lot of the other MSc students will be outside in the tea area, and yeah, hopefully, if the students are, I know some of the students are here, if you could stand by your poster and field questions over tea, I'm sure that everyone would find that useful. That's all I think we want to say. I mean, I think both of the presentations sort of illustrate in some ways the strength of these kinds of collaborations. Both ask questions which, going back to what some of was said this morning, are in some senses interesting. They're not immediately focused upon solutions to operational problems within the retail sector. But I think they do ask a number of questions which are relevant and of potentially strategic importance in future research development. So that's all I think we want to say, David.
Well, thanks very much, Paul. And perfect timing, if I may say so. We're 3 minutes early for tea, but Keith's got a way of holding us up for 3 minutes.
Yeah, I just thought I'd actually read out the titles of the projects, because there's a risk that people will just be eating the biscuits and then miss them as they go. So I think that the 7 that we'll find out there are Evaluation of Supplier Insight Delivering Return on Investment, which is a project for Boots by William Newell. Strategic Territory Decisioning for British Gas by Oliver Turner. Census 2011, Adam Nails for Co-op. Targeting houses to deliver eco, and I think eco is a technical term in the energy world. This was Jonathan Holt for E.ON. Retail, location and emerging overseas markets, Amanda Dillon for Experian. Public transport travel time model, Matthew Blackwell for Experian, and we've got Robert, the prize winner, mobile social media for M&S. So nice range of topics there to have a natter about.
Good. Thanks very much indeed, Keith. It's tea time, and I suggest we get back by 4 o'clock. So plenty of things to talk about in the meantime, and we'll get you all to make your second major contribution after tea. So I look forward to welcoming you back at 4 o'clock, please.